What if I told you that the legendary, the sci-fi city of Atlantis, and the very foundation of how the Apostle John described Jesus Christ in his gospel, both actually originate from the exact same ancient pagan math textbook?
It sounds like a completely bizarre conspiracy theory, I know, but it is entirely historically accurate.
Right.
You're talking about a text that provided the foundational vocabulary for early Christian theology while, simultaneously inventing the most famous mythical sunken city in human history.
It's wild. And we are talking about Plato's Timaeus. So for you listening right now, our mission today is to take this obscure, honestly mathematically dense, 2,400-year-old philosophical masterpiece and figure out how it can actually help you love Jesus more deeply.
Which is quite the leap, right? From ancient Greek geometry to loving Jesus.
Exactly. But we have a robust stack of sources to get us there. We were looking at the classic Benjamin Jowett translation of the Timaeus, complete with his historical commentary. And we're pairing that with a really comprehensive suite of modern biblical, intertextual, and theological critiques.
We are basically putting Plato head-to-head with Genesis, Proverbs, the Gospel of John, and Colossians.
Which is going to be so much fun.
It really is. And my role today will be to navigate the rather dense thicket of ancient Greek thought, and of course the ancient Near Eastern historical context.
Because we definitely need a guide for that.
Well, I'll do my best. But the goal here isn't to turn you into a Greek philosopher. The goal is to show how understanding this specific ancient blueprint of the universe ultimately sharpens your intellectual discernment.
Yeah.
And hopefully inspires a profound gratitude for the gospel in your daily life.
Okay, so let's dive into the Timaeus. We need to set the parameters of what Plato's actually trying to do here, because he's essentially trying to conceive of the whole of nature, right?
That's a good way to put it, the whole of nature.
And the text itself is framed as a sequel to his most famous political work, The Republic. So he had this gathering, right? It's the day after Socrates has just described his ideal city-state.
Right, the perfect society.
Yeah, and present at this gathering are Socrates, a mathematician named Timaeus, a statesman named Critias, and Hermocrates. But before anyone talks about the creation of the cosmos or anything like that, Critias tells a story.
And it's not just any story. He claims it's a legend passed down from Egyptian priests to the Greek lawgiver Solon.
Okay.
It's this epic narrative of a noble, ancient version of Athens, supposedly existing 9,000 years prior. And this virtuous Athens is facing off against a massive, technologically advanced, and incredibly hubristic empire.
An empire that had subjected much of Libya and Europe, according to the text.
Exactly.
Which is Atlantis. This completely blew my mind when I was prepping for this deep dive. I always assumed Atlantis was just a standalone Greek myth,
Yeah.
Like maybe tied to Poseidon in some poetic epic like the Odyssey.
Most people do. Modern pop culture definitely treats it that way.
Right. But it's actually a philosophical thought experiment introduced right here in this book.
It is. Plato uses the story of Atlantis very deliberately. In his story, the virtuous, highly structured ancient Athenians defeat the chaotic, arrogant Atlanteans.
Wow.
And then after the victory, a great earthquake and flood cause Atlantis to sink into the sea. Now, as you said, pop culture takes this as a sci-fi mystery. People are out there searching the ocean floor for ruins.
Yeah, History Channel specials all the time.
Exactly. But for Plato, this is an eikos muthos.
Eikos muthos, meaning what exactly?
It means a likely story or a mythic narrative. It's an allegorical mirror.
So he's not writing a history book at all?
No, not at all. He's writing a macro-level preview. He is demonstrating politically and socially how order defeats chaos.
Because that is exactly what he's about to argue happens at the dawn of the universe itself.
The transition is seamless, really. Once Critias finishes the political allegory of order subduing chaos, Timaeus takes over the conversation to explain the cosmological reality of order subduing chaos.
Okay, I see.
But to do that, Timaeus first has to lay down a fundamental metaphysical division. This is honestly the core architecture of Platonic thought.
This is the being versus becoming thing.
Exactly. He divides all of reality into two categories, being and becoming.
Okay, I want to make sure I really grasp this and that you listening grasp this, because literally everything else we talk about rests on it. So being is the realm of things that always are.
Correct.
They have no origin point, they have no end, and they never ever change.
Yes. Think of mathematical concepts or perfect virtues, like the concept of the number 2,
Right.
or the perfect idea of justice. The number 2 doesn't erode over time. It doesn't rust.
You can't break the number 2.
Exactly. It isn't born and it doesn't die. It resides in the realm of being, and you can only grasp it through pure reason and reflection. You can't touch it with your hands.
Okay, so then opposed to that eternal realm, you have the realm of becoming. And this is everything we can touch, see, and interact with, the physical world.
Yes, the visible sphere.
And Plato's logic is that because the physical world is constantly in flux, like mountains wear down, bodies age, seasons change, it never truly is. It is always in the process of becoming something else.
That's a perfect summary. And because it is visible and changing, it is grasped by our senses and our opinions, which, for Plato, are inherently fallible.
You can't trust your eyes as much as you can trust pure math.
Precisely. Now, Plato makes a crucial logical deduction here. If the physical universe belongs to the realm of becoming, it must have been created.
It must have a starting point.
Right. It must have a cause. It cannot be eternal in the way that math is eternal.
Which introduces the character of the creator in this text. Plato calls him the Demiurgos, the Demiurge.
The Craftsman.
Yes, the Craftsman. And Timaeus says this Demiurge is good, completely free from jealousy, and he looks at the visible sphere of reality, which is just a chaotic, churning mess at this point, and he desires to bring order to it.
He wants to make it as perfect as he is.
Right. He wants to stamp order onto the chaos. Now, that sounds vaguely familiar to a Christian ear, right? A good creator wanting to bring order. But we have to dissect that word craftsman.
If you really do.
Because I want to push on that. If I hire a master craftsman, say like a carpenter, to come renovate a dilapidated, falling apart house for me.
Okay, sure.
That carpenter is going to measure, cut, join, and bring total order to the chaos of that rotting wood. But the carpenter didn't invent the concept of wood. He didn't create the dirt the house sits on. He's just imposing an architecture onto pre-existing materials.
Right.
So is Plato's Demiurge just a cosmic home renovator? I mean, wait, so Plato's God isn't creating the universe from scratch.
You're close with the analogy, but let's stretch that carpenter analogy even further to truly understand the Greek limitation here.
Okay, stretch it.
Imagine your carpenter isn't just dealing with pre-existing wood. Imagine the wood actively resists being shaped.
Like it's fighting back.
Exactly. Plato's Demiurge works with a pre-existing, intractable, chaotic matter. Plato calls this the receptacle, or the chora in Greek.
The chora.
Yes. It's this formless, erratic space that just constantly shakes and turns. It has its own chaotic motion.
So the chaos is eternal.
Yeah.
It was always there, just sitting alongside the Demiurge.
Yes. The Demiurge looks up at the eternal archetype, the perfect patterns in the realm of being we talked about.
The math.
Right, the math. And then he looks down at this messy, stubborn chora, and he tries to stamp the perfect pattern onto the chaotic matter.
But the matter doesn't want to take the stamp.
Exactly. He is constrained by the materials. He doesn't speak things into existence out of nothing. He wrestles them into the best possible shape they will tolerate.
Wow.
So if there are flaws in the universe, Plato argues, it's not because the Demiurge is bad or incompetent. It's because the raw materials of the chora are inherently stubborn.
That drastically lowers the power level of the creator, doesn't it? If the materials are stubborn, the final product inherently contains compromises.
It fundamentally limits his sovereignty, yes.
But the way the Demiurge actually goes about organizing this stubborn chaos is mind-bending. This is where we get into what the sources call geometric atomism.
This is one of the most famous parts of the Timaeus.
Right. Plato essentially decides that the building blocks of reality are microscopic triangles.
Which is a breathtaking attempt to deduce particle physics using only pure logic and geometry. I mean, remember, Plato didn't have a particle accelerator. He didn't have a microscope.
Just a really big brain.
Yes. He asked a basic question. What is the most fundamental property of matter? Well, it must have depth.
Okay.
If it has depth, it must be bounded by surfaces. And the most basic, irreducible, two-dimensional surface you can draw that encloses a space is a triangle.
Specifically, the text says isosceles and scalene triangles.
Right.
And he says the Demiurge pieces these invisible triangles together to form 3D geometric shapes, which are what we now call the Platonic solids.
Yes, the 5 regular polyhedra.
And he assigns these shapes to the 4 classical elements: fire, air, water, and earth.
And what's brilliant is that he doesn't assign them randomly. He uses observational logic to map the geometry to the physical sensation.
Give me an example of that.
Well, for example, fire is assigned the tetrahedron, which is essentially a 4-sided pyramid.
Why a pyramid for fire? Because a pyramid has the sharpest angles and the fewest faces. It's pointy.
Exactly. Plato says that when fire touches your skin, it feels like it's piercing and cutting you because At a microscopic level, you are literally being stabbed by millions of tiny, sharp pyramids.
That is hilarious and amazing. You're being stabbed by geometry.
Right. Conversely, look at water. He assigns water the icosahedron, which is a shape with the 20 faces.
That's much closer to a sphere.
Yes. Because it has so many faces, it's rounder, it's heavier, and it's highly mobile.
So that geometric reality explains why water flows, why it rolls, and why it conforms to the shape of whatever cup you pour it into.
Precisely. Air gets the octahedron, which is intermediate in sharpness and mobility.
And Earth gets the cube, because a cube is the most stable, immobile, and solid base possible. It won't roll, it just sits there.
The ingenuity here really is staggering. He is trying to logically explain the how of the physical world.
Yeah, Benjamin Jowett's commentary points out something really interesting here. He says that while the specific idea of, fire pyramids stabbing you is scientifically obsolete today, Plato was actually prophesying the future of physics.
Jowett makes a great point. He argues that Plato brilliantly anticipated the absolute supremacy of mathematics in nature.
By asserting that physical matter is ultimately reducible to mathematical forms.
Yes. Plato was centuries ahead of his time on that front. Think about modern quantum physicists. When they describe an electron today, they aren't describing a tiny, hard billiard ball.
No, they're looking at probability clouds.
Right, they're describing a mathematical probability distribution. Plato understood that beneath the messiness of the visible, touchable world lies a bedrock of pure mathematics.
And he even extends this math to the soul of the universe itself, which is a wild concept. The text says the Demiurge created a world soul.
Yes, the anima mundi.
And he mixed it using specific mathematical and musical ratios. The numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 8, and 27.
Which aren't just random numbers. Those numbers represent Pythagorean tuning.
Pythagorean tuning. Break that down for me.
Well, the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 make up the tetractys, which was a sacred symbol in Pythagorean mysticism representing the dimensions of space.
Okay.
And the intervals between 1, 2, 4, 8, and 1, 3, 9, 27 represent the musical intervals of fourths, fifths, and octaves.
Oh, wow. So he's building a scale.
He is. Plato is arguing that the celestial bodies, the planets and the stars, are literally spaced and orchestrated according to the harmonic laws of a musical scale.
So the universe is, quite literally, a symphony.
A giant mathematical symphony, yes.
And as the planets move in this symphonic dance, they create time. I really love Plato's definition of time here. I think it's one of the most beautiful lines in the text. He calls time a moving image of eternity.
It is a striking phrase.
The eternal realm, the realm of being, is perfectly still. But because the physical universe is made of that stubborn cora, it can't perfectly mimic that stillness.
It's too restless.
So the Demiurge invents time, measured by the physical looping orbits of the planets, to be a moving, cyclical imitation of eternal rest.
It's almost poetic.
It is very poetic. But the Timaeus doesn't just leave us floating in outer space with the planets.
No, it gets very personal.
Very personal. Plato takes this grand, symphonic, macrocosmic blueprint, and he shrinks it all the way down. He maps the entire universe onto the human body.
So the human is a microcosm of the whole universe.
Exactly.
And human anatomy, according to Plato, is heavily segregated based on the purity of the soul. At the very top, encased in the head, you have the immortal soul.
Yes, the divine ruler, the seat of reason. And Plato explicitly says the head is round because it's mimicking the spherical shape of the universe.
The head is literally the cosmos of the body.
That is wild. But beneath the neck, which Plato describes as this sort of isthmus built to keep the pure divine reason from being polluted by mortal passions.
A physical choke point for sin, essentially.
Right. Beneath that neck, you have the mortal soul. And this mortal soul is further divided into two parts. In the breast, the chest cavity, resides the higher mortal soul.
This is the seat of courage, pride, and righteous anger.
And it's situated close enough to the head to listen to reason, acting as a soldier to enforce the mind's will.
Yes, the chest is the military enforcer of the brain.
And enforce it against what?
Against the lowest part.
Right. Plato places the appetitive soul, the part of us that just wants food, drink, and base desires, down in the belly. And he literally describes it as being tied up like a wild beast at a manger.
A beast that constantly wants to feed.
So the divine mind in the head has to somehow govern this wild beast down in the stomach. And the physiological mechanism Plato invents for this is wildly creative. It involves the liver.
Oh, the liver. This is my favorite part. The liver as a physiological mirror.
Yes. Okay, explain how this works. Like, I was laughing out loud reading this.
It is quite something.
Hmm.
So Plato says the gods made the liver dense, smooth, bright, and sweet, but also capable of being bitter.
Okay, a sweet and bitter organ.
Right. And during sleep, when the rational mind is disconnected from the outside world, thoughts descend from the brain and reflect off the smooth surface of the liver like a mirror.
Wait, literally like a physical mirror.
Yes. This is how the rational mind terrifies the wild beast in the belly with bitter, threatening reflections, or soothes it with sweet, prophetic visions.
So our dreams are just brain lasers bouncing off a shiny liver to scare our stomachs into behaving.
That is essentially what he is arguing, yes. And then he claims the spleen is positioned right next to the liver to act like a sponge or a napkin to wipe the liver mirror clean after these visions.
The spleen is a napkin. Oh my goodness. It is entirely unscientific, obviously.
But philosophically, it is a fascinating attempt to explain the subconscious, intuition, and dreams. Everything in human anatomy is designed with a teleological purpose.
Right, a specific end goal.
Yes, to facilitate reason or to manage the chaos of our lower bodily nature.
But wait, I have a massive problem with where Plato takes this. Here's where it gets really interesting and honestly problematic.
Let's hear it.
If our entire internal life is dictated by triangles, geometry, and bodily organs reflecting visions like a funhouse mirror, what happens when someone does something evil?
Ah, the ethical dilemma.
Yeah, because Plato argues that disease is just a physical imbalance of the four elements, fine. But then he explicitly extends that to morality. He says mental disorders and even moral vices are involuntary. If sin is just a physical illness or a math error in the body, where does personal responsibility fit in?
It's a great question. Plato actually writes in the text, "No man is voluntarily bad."
Which is a crazy statement.
It is. He attributes badness to an ill disposition of the body and an uneducated upbringing.
Right. He says the planters are to blame rather than the plants, meaning your teachers and your parents.
Yes.
So if you have weak bone marrow that makes your humors too fluid, or if bitter vapors from your belly get trapped in your chest and cloud your rational circuits, you become susceptible to rashness or lust.
That's his medical diagnosis for sin.
But if sin is just a math error in your body's geometry, or a physical vapor clouding your brain, doesn't that completely destroy the concept of justice? How do you hold someone morally accountable for having a mathematically unbalanced liver?
You've hit on the fundamental limitation of Greek ethical philosophy right there.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, for Plato, who is really just following in the footsteps of his teacher Socrates here, evil is ultimately just ignorance. Or, as described in the Timaeus, physiological dysfunction.
It's a broken machine.
Exactly. If you simply give a citizen the right geometric balance, proper gymnastics for the body and harmonic music for the soul, they will naturally become virtuous.
Because you're just tuning an instrument. Like if my guitar is out of tune, it plays a bad chord. I don't punish the guitar. I don't send the guitar to jail. I just adjust the pegs.
Precisely. You fix the tension. What is completely absent from Platonic thought is any biblical category for moral rebellion.
There is no fall.
There is no concept of a fall. There is no concept of a human will that looks at the good, knows it is the good, and actively, voluntarily chooses to defy a holy God anyway.
Right. Plato sees a human as a misaligned machine that requires educational and physical recalibration. He does not see a spiritually dead rebel who requires resurrection and a savior.
That is a staggering contrast, and it forces our transition perfectly, I think.
Let's do it.
We've been immersed in the philosophy of Athens. We understand the Demiurge, the stubborn Cora, the geometric universe, and the misaligned human machine. Now we need to travel to Jerusalem.
We need to see what happens when Plato's cosmological blueprint is laid side by side with the revelation of the God of the Bible.
Yes. Now, to give Plato his due, the Timaeus was a massive intellectual leap forward for the ancient world.
How so?
Well, before Plato, the dominant Greek creation myth was Hesiod's theogony.
Oh, the theogony is wild.
It is extremely violent. It's a chaotic narrative filled with anthropomorphic gods castrating each other, swallowing their children whole, and acting out of pure, petty vengeance.
Really awful stuff.
Right. So Plato completely demythologized the cosmos. He stripped away all those capricious, petty deities and replaced them with a single, rational, intellectual craftsman. He argued the universe makes logical sense.
He cleaned up the neighborhood, basically.
Yeah.
Upgraded the whole system. But how does that rational craftsman hold up against the opening lines of the Old Testament?
Let's look at the text. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
A verse everyone knows.
Yes, but we need to focus on the Hebrew verb used for created here. That word is bara.
Bara.
In the entirety of the Old Testament Hebrew, this specific verb is exclusively reserved for divine action.
Oh, really? Humans never bara.
Never. Humans can make, they can form, build, or shape things, but only God can bara. It denotes bringing something into existence that had absolutely no prior material basis.
Okay, so let's bring back our carpenter analogy from earlier. Plato's Demiurge was stuck with the Korah, right?
Yeah.
That eternal, chaotic receptacle that kept fighting him.
Right.
Now, sometimes people read Genesis 1, verse 2, which says the earth was formless and void. Tohu wabohu in Hebrew.
Yes, tohu bohu.
And they say, Genesis is just like Plato. God found some dark, formless chaos floating around in the void and decided to organize it into a planet.
That is an incredibly common yet highly anachronistic reading.
Okay, correct that for us.
From the conservative, evangelical, theological perspective represented in our sources, tohu wabohu does not imply that God stumbled upon eternal, uncreated, chaotic matter.
He didn't just find a messy room and clean it?
No. Genesis 1, verse 1 establishes the absolute origin of all things. God created the materials. So, tohu wabohu simply describes the initial unformed state of the raw materials that God just brought into existence out of nothing. Okay.
It's the state of the matter before he begins to structure them in the subsequent days of the creation week.
And the mechanism he uses to structure them completely destroys the Platonic idea of a struggling craftsman, doesn't it?
Oh, completely.
I mean, look at Genesis 1, verse 3. And God said, "Let there be light." The Hebrew is wayomer. He speaks.
The absolute efficacy of the sovereign word. Think about the contrast. The Demiurge sweats over a metaphysical workbench, right? He's trying to force stubborn triangles to fit together against their will.
Yeah, fighting the math.
But the God of Genesis exercises absolute effortless authority. He speaks and reality obeys instantly. The theological term is creatio ex nihilo, creation out of nothing.
So the distinction really comes down to absolute freedom versus constraint.
Exactly.
Plato gives us a limited God bounded by eternal matter he didn't make and an eternal pattern he didn't design. The biblical God is the absolutely free Lord who originates both the materials and the pattern entirely from his own sovereign will. However, we shouldn't act like there's no crossover, because there are moments where the two traditions share an incredible thematic resonance.
I'm glad you brought that up, because reading Proverbs alongside the Timaeus is fascinating.
It really is. If we look at the wisdom literature of the Old Testament, specifically Proverbs chapter 8, we find a remarkable parallel.
Right. Proverbs 8, verse 30. In this chapter, wisdom is personified as a woman speaking about her presence with God at the dawn of creation. She says, "Then I was beside him, like a master workman."
The Hebrew word there is amon.
Amon. What does that translate to exactly?
It translates to a skilled artisan, a craftsman, or an architect.
See, when you read that after reading the Timaeus, it practically jumps off the page at you. You have this distinct craftsman figure standing beside the Lord, ensuring the universe is built with perfect order. It feels like Plato and the author of Proverbs are looking at the exact same cosmic blueprint of a master workman.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, they are essentially participating in a shared ancient conceptual matrix.
Meaning they breathe the same cultural air.
Exactly. It's the idea that the universe is not a random accident. Both texts fundamentally agree that the structure of reality is rational, intelligible, and deeply purposeful.
Okay, but we have to look at the foundations. Why is the universe rational?
Because of where they locate the source of that order.
Right. For Plato, the order comes from abstract, impersonal mathematical forms. The Demiurge is looking up at a realm of being that exists completely independently of him. He's a subservient to the math.
Exactly right. But in Proverbs, where does wisdom come from?
Well, wisdom isn't an external mathematical law that Yahweh has to obey. Wisdom is a personified expression of God's very own character.
Yes. The order of the universe is grounded in the personal nature of the Creator. It's not outside of him.
Plato's universe is a manifestation of an equation. The biblical universe is a manifestation of a person.
And that profound shift from an equation to a person becomes the absolute focal point when we turn the page into the New Testament.
Oh man, this is where I get really excited, because this is where it gets incredibly practical for you listening.
Right.
How does this ancient architectural debate actually point us to Jesus? So what does this all mean? We've got a demiurge, we've got a master workman in Proverbs. How do the writers of the New Testament take this cultural vocabulary and use it to explain the incarnation?
Let's examine the prologue to the Gospel of John.
Oh, the best part.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made.
Very familiar verses to anyone who grew up in the church. But if we put ourselves in the shoes of a first-century Greek or Roman intellectual, hearing this, it hits completely differently, doesn't it?
Completely differently. And it's all because of the Greek word John uses for the word.
The logos.
Yes, logos. For centuries, Greek philosophers, including Platonists and Stoics, utilized the term logos to describe the rational governing principle of the universe.
The ultimate logic.
Exactly. The logos was the impersonal logic that held the stars in their orbits, made the math work, and kept the chaotic chora at bay.
So when John walks into that Greco-Roman cultural marketplace and says, in the beginning was the logos, every Greek philosopher in the room is nodding along. They're like, yes, the rational principle. We know about that. Read the Timaeus.
Right, they think they're on the same page.
But then John drops a theological nuclear bomb. He says, the logos became flesh and dwelt among us.
The audacity of that claim to a Platonist is staggering.
I mean, it breaks their whole system, right?
It shatters it.
Yeah.
The abstract, untouchable, eternal pattern of reality just put on human skin, walked in the dirt, and wept at a tomb. John is saying that the ultimate organizing principle of the universe is not an equation, it is Jesus of Nazareth.
And the grammar John uses to describe Jesus' relationship to creation completely upgrades the Timaeus. Like, let's break down the Greek verbs he uses in those first 3 verses because it's so intentional.
John is incredibly precise here. In verse 1, he says, in the beginning was the Word. The Greek verb used is en, en.
And what tense is that?
Which is in the imperfect tense. In Greek, the imperfect tense denotes a continuous, ongoing state of existence in the past.
It's not an event.
No. It means the logos had no starting point.
Yeah.
He continuously, eternally was.
He belongs fully to the realm of being, to use Plato's terms. He is uncreated.
Yes, exactly. But then, in verse 3, when John shifts to discussing the created universe, all things were made through him.
Right.
He switches the verb tense. He uses agenito, which is in the aorist tense.
And what does the aorist tense do?
The aorist tense acts like a snapshot. It marks a definitive, singular, punctiliar moment when something occurred, a specific event.
Okay, so by switching from the imperfect en to the aorist agenito, John draws this impenetrable, uncrossable boundary between the eternal creator and the temporal creation.
Yes.
Jesus didn't become alongside the universe. Jesus was, and the universe definitively happened through him.
The Logos is not a subordinate craftsman wrestling with eternal chaos. He is the sovereign agent of creation.
I love that. And the Apostle Paul takes this even further in his letter to the Colossians.
Colossians chapter 1 is a masterpiece of cosmology.
It really is. Colossians 1, verses 16 and 17 says, "For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together."
In him all things hold together.
Hold together. That phrase is doing so much heavy lifting. What is the Greek behind that?
The Greek verb is synastaken.
Synastaken.
Yes. And understanding how Greek aspectual theory works here is vital. This verb is in the perfect tense.
Okay, perfect tense. Break that down for us non-Greek scholars.
In Greek grammar, the perfect tense isn't just about something that happened in the past. It describes an action completed in the past that has produced a new state of affairs that continues to be a present reality.
Oh, wow. So it's not just that he held it together back at the Big Bang or back at Genesis 1.
Yeah.
It's that his past action of creation results in him actively holding it together right this exact second.
Yeah. Exactly. Which completely shatters Plato's conception of a self-sufficient universe.
Because Plato thought the universe ran on its own, right?
Right. Plato believed the Demiurge constructed the universe as a living animal. A zunum psychon.
A zunum psychon.
Yes. The Demiurge wound it up with the world soul, locked in the mathematical ratios, and essentially let it run on its own internal harmony.
Like a cosmic wind-up toy. You turn the key, you set it down on the floor, and it just marches forward on its own because the geometric gears inside are cut perfectly. The maker can walk away.
But the biblical universe described in Colossians is not a mechanical wind-up toy.
No, it's much more fragile and dependent than that.
Yeah.
I was thinking about an analogy for this. Think about a magnificent musical instrument like a brass trumpet.
Okay.
The craftsman can forge the brass flawlessly. The keys can be perfectly aligned. The bell can be shaped to absolute acoustic perfection.
A perfect creation.
Right. But if you set that perfect trumpet on a table, it is dead silent. The structural perfection means absolutely nothing without breath. The instrument only produces music as long as the musician is actively, continuously blowing breath through it. The moment the breath stops, the music stops.
That is a beautiful way to put it.
Paul is saying that Christ isn't just the craftsman who built the trumpet. He is the continuous active breath, sustaining the music of reality at every nanosecond. If he stops sustaining it, the atoms fly apart. Synesthekin.
That analogy captures the theology perfectly, and it adds a profound layer to how we view the purpose or the teleology of the universe.
The ultimate goal of it all.
Right. Plato sees the cosmos as a perfect geometric harmony. Therefore, he assumes its ultimate goal is simply to remain harmonious.
Just don't rock the boat.
Exactly. The highest good a human can achieve is to study astronomy, observe the perfect rotations of the stars, and try to align the chaotic rotations of their own mind with that celestial math.
Just become a well-behaved cog in the cosmic machine.
But the New Testament introduces a concept entirely foreign to Platonic thought: redemptive history.
Redemptive history.
Yes. When the Apostle Paul looks at the physical universe in Romans 8, he doesn't see a perfect, self-sufficient, living animal. He sees a creation that is groaning in the pains of childbirth.
Because of the fall. Because human sin didn't just break our relationship with God, it fractured the very material world we were supposed to govern.
The universe is subject to futility, Paul says. It is incredibly beautiful, yes, but it is fundamentally broken.
It's groaning.
It is not just a static geometric display case in a museum. It is the active stage for a grand drama of redemption.
So it's waiting for something.
Exactly. The universe isn't waiting to be perfectly mathematically balanced. Paul says it is waiting to be liberated from its bondage to decay when the sons of God are finally revealed in glory.
That reorients everything. You don't just look at a sunset and see mathematical perfection. You look at it and see a beautiful, groaning world waiting for its king to return.
It changes how you see nature itself.
Which brings up a really fascinating historical question. As Christianity exploded out of Judea and across the Greco-Roman world in those first few centuries, these early believers had to confront Plato.
They couldn't avoid him.
Right. The Timaeus was essentially the universally accepted science and philosophy textbook of the Roman Empire. Every educated person read it. So how did the early church handle this? Did they view Plato as a demonic deception to be burned, or did they embrace him?
Their approach was remarkably nuanced. The early church fathers practiced a method we might call reverent correction.
Reverent correction.
Yes. They didn't view Plato as a demon, nor did they elevate him to the level of an inspired prophet like Isaiah.
Right, he's not in the canon.
No. They viewed him as a brilliant thinker who had maximized the light of general revelation.
General revelation being what you can know about God just from looking at nature.
Exactly. What can be known through nature and reason. But he was desperately lacking special revelation, the Word of God.
Give me an example of how they actually engaged with him in the public square.
Consider Justin Martyr in the 2nd century.
Okay, Justin Martyr.
He was an apologist writing to the Roman emperor to defend the Christian faith against persecution. Justin had definitely read the Timaeus, and his argument was incredibly bold. He claimed that Plato must have actually plagiarized Moses.
Wait, seriously? He accused Plato of stealing from the Torah.
Yes. Justin pointed to Plato's ideas of a creator bringing order to chaos, or the immortality of the soul, and he argued that Plato must have encountered the writings of the Old Testament prophets during his alleged travels to Egypt.
That is hilarious. Is there any historical basis for that?
Well, from a modern historical perspective, that timeline and that plagiarism claim are highly, highly improbable.
Yeah, that seems like a stretch.
But Justin's apologetic strategy was brilliant. He was telling the educated Greek elite the deepest, most cherished philosophical truths you hold in Plato actually belong to us.
Oh, wow.
They find their true origin in the God of the Hebrews.
It's like saying, I see your Demiurge and I raise you Yahweh. That's a fascinating way to co-opt the cultural high ground.
It was very effective. And then you have someone like Origen of Alexandria in the 3rd century.
Okay, what did Origen do?
Well, Origen was surrounded by a massive heresy called Gnosticism.
Gnosticism. That's the one that hates the physical body, right?
Right. The Gnostics taught that the physical, material world was inherently evil, a cosmic mistake created by a malicious, lower-level deity.
So matter is bad, spirit is good.
Yes. They believed salvation was escaping the physical body to return to a pure spiritual realm.
Which completely contradicts Genesis 1, obviously, where God creates the physical world and repeatedly calls it good, culminating in very good.
Exactly. So Origen utilized the Platonic structures found in the Timaeus to defend biblical theology.
Wait, he used Plato to fight the Gnostics?
He did. He took Plato's arguments about the intense rationality, the mathematical precision, and the inherent goodness of the physical cosmos and used them as a weapon against the Gnostics.
That is so smart.
He argued that a universe this meticulously designed could not possibly be the product of an evil or incompetent God. It had to be the work of a supremely good creator.
So Origen basically used Plato's own science to defend the Genesis account of a good material creation.
Exactly.
So they clearly found common ground. But, I mean, there is a danger there, isn't there?
Always.
If you synthesize too much, you end up compromising the gospel. You end up preaching a Greek craftsman instead of a crucified savior. Where did they draw the line?
That tension was perfectly resolved by Augustine of Hippo, arguably the most influential theologian of the early Western Church.
Oh, Augustine.
In his monumental work, The City of God, Augustine devotes entire chapters to analyzing the Platonists, and he is incredibly generous with his praise at first.
Okay.
He states that Plato got closer to the truth than any other philosophical school because Plato recognized that the ultimate reality was an immutable, eternal, immaterial good.
But I hear a however coming.
A massive one. Augustine firmly and devastatingly critiqued Plato for lacking the ultimate, saving truth, the mediator.
The mediator. Jesus.
Right. Augustine essentially says to Plato, you stood on a high mountain and you saw the destination from afar. You saw the divine light of the homeland, but you had absolutely no idea how to get there.
Wow.
You saw the destination, but you did not know the way.
Because Plato had no incarnation. He had an abstract floating logos, but he had no logos made flesh.
Precisely. For Plato, the bridge between the messy human condition and the divine was intellectual philosophy.
Just do more math.
Right. If you just studied hard enough and did enough geometry, your soul could ascend. But for Augustine and for the New Testament, the bridge is the physical blood of Jesus Christ.
Which is offensive to a Platonist.
The cross is deeply offensive to Platonic philosophy because it involves the divine lowering itself, entering into the messy physical reality of suffering and death.
The chora. The divine entering the chora.
Yes. But for the Christian, that agonizing, messy physical reality is the very mechanism of our salvation.
You saw the homeland, but you didn't know the way. That really gives me chills. So bringing this all the way down to the ground.
Let's do it.
For you listening right now, maybe you're driving to work or making dinner or prepping for a meeting, we've covered a massive amount of ground today.
We really have.
We've talked about Atlantis, Platonic solids, floating triangles, a liver acting as a mirror, the Demiurge, the Hebrew bara, a spectral verb theory, and the early church fathers.
It's a heavy stack.
It is. So how does knowing all this dense history actually help you right now in your daily walk with Christ? How does this deepen your faith? What are the takeaways here?
I think there are three profound, highly practical takeaways for the Christian listener today.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is cultivating an eye for divine design.
Cultivating an eye.
Think about Plato. Here is a pagan philosopher with zero access to the Bible, no knowledge of Yahweh, and no modern scientific instruments. Yet, he looks at the orbit of Jupiter, he considers the geometry of a scalene triangle, and he's so awestruck by the mathematical harmony that he writes a cosmological masterpiece, attributing it all to a divine craftsman.
It should act as a mirror for us.
Yes.
It should deeply convict and inspire us. If Plato can be moved to philosophical worship by looking at basic geometry, how much more should we, who actually know the name of the Creator, be moved to worship?
Wonder must lead to worship.
Exactly. The next time you look through a telescope or see the Fibonacci sequence in a pine cone, or even just study a complex, beautifully balanced spreadsheet at work, you aren't just seeing abstract math. You're seeing the actual fingerprints of the logos. It should drive you immediately to doxology.
I love that. The second application is developing a profound, fierce gratitude for special revelation.
The Bible.
Yes. General revelation, human logic, observation, the scientific method, it's a gift. But it has severe limits.
It can only take you so far.
Right. It could only get Plato as far as deducing a craftsman. He figured out the world was built, but he couldn't figure out who built it, whether that builder loved him, or how he could ever be forgiven for his sins.
Human reason can deduce a demiurge, But only the gospel reveals a father who gave his only son.
Exactly.
You need a Bible to know about grace. That should make you hold your Bible a little tighter today. You possess the specific, saving revelation that the greatest, most brilliant minds of antiquity desperately searched for in the stars, but could never find.
Which leads directly to the third takeaway, cultural discernment.
This is a big one.
We live in a modern world that is constantly producing new secular philosophies, new scientific paradigms, and new ways of explaining reality. Many Christians feel intimidated by this.
Yeah, they feel they have to choose between science and faith, or they adopt a bunker mentality, just hiding from secular thought entirely.
But the early church fathers didn't hide from Plato, they engaged him.
They read the textbooks.
Exactly. And by studying how the early church handled the Timaeus, you are equipped to do the exact same thing today. You learn how to spot the imago Dei, the image of God, in human scientific inquiry.
So when a modern secular astrophysicist marvels at the extreme fine-tuning of the universe's expansion rate, you don't have to be afraid of their secularism. You can agree with them.
Yes, you can appreciate their hunger for truth and their recognition of order.
But you also have the discernment to spot exactly where their worldview falls short.
Precisely.
You can say, yes, the fine-tuning of the universe is absolutely staggering, but it's not just an abstract anthropic principle or a lucky multiverse. Let me introduce you to the sustainer, the one actively blowing breath through the instrument.
You can use their own scientific observations as a bridge to point them directly to Jesus. You can recognize the common grace in their work while remaining fiercely anchored in the special grace of the gospel.
It creates a believer who is intellectually robust, culturally confident, and spiritually grounded.
That is the goal.
That is an incredibly empowering place to be as a Christian. Let's look back at the journey we've taken today. We started in the mythological realm of Atlantis, exploring Plato's brilliant, if ultimately flawed, attempt to construct a universe out of triangles and musical ratios.
We met his Demiurge.
Right, a craftsman constrained by eternal chaotic matter. We then brought that into collision with the sovereign God of Genesis, whose sheer spoken word calls reality into existence out of nothing. We saw how Proverbs personified wisdom, and finally how the Apostle John and the Apostle Paul completely rewrote the cosmic script by revealing the glorious logos, Jesus Christ.
The sustainer.
Yes, he isn't just a distant engineer who wound up a cosmic clock. He's the intimate active sustainer holding together a universe that is groaning for its final redemption.
It is a sweeping historical trajectory, moving from the desperate striving of human philosophy to the glorious resting place of divine revelation.
And as we close this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to chew on, something to consider the next time you step outside at night and look up at the sky.
Consider this. Plato fundamentally believed that the highest goal of humanity was to align the internal chaotic motions of our souls with the cold, perfect, mathematical rotations of the stars.
Just conform to the math.
Right. He thought we were essentially just gears, meant to sync up with a massive cosmic clock. But what if the ultimate goal of the universe isn't just to achieve structural, geometric perfection?
Okay.
What if the universe was precisely meticulously engineered by God, not to be a sterile, perfectly balanced machine, but to serve as the perfect stage for the greatest, most costly love story ever told, the incarnation, the cross, and the redemption of humanity?
The universe as the stage for grace.
Exactly.
The math, the physics, the geometry, they are all real, and they hold the floorboards of the stage together. But they are just the scaffolding. The drama is the gospel. The next time you look up at the stars, don't just see the math. See the theater of God's grace. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep looking up, keep asking the big questions, and we will catch you on the next one.